Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Stir the Coco. We are calling this episode Spa for the Brain. Yes, because knitting is making waves in the neuroscience world. It's not just about knitting a sweater or a scarf, you're actually crafting a better brain. Yes. So when people would be like, oh, my grandma's sitting there knitting, guess what? She was crafting a really good brain. And I'm going to share with you some interesting research and 4 or 5 things that make knitting a great thing for the brain. Then we're going to go off to our Spanish class. So we're going to do some Espanol. I'm excited because I'm going to share with you one of my favorite phrases. And then we have a field trip. We are off to talk with Amy. Amy is an extremely talented knitter. She has written her own pattern, and she is a test knitter for some companies, and you're really going to enjoy my conversation with Amy. So I can't wait to share that with you, and it might inspire you even more to get a hold of some needles and some yarn and start knitting or crocheting. So here we go. Let's talk about research, because I'm all about some good research for the brain. So this study comes from the Neuropsychiatry and Clinical Neuroscience, and they found that older adults who engage in crafting activities such as knitting and crochet have a lower risk of developing mild cognitive impairment and memory loss. So what does that mean? They are creating neuroplasticity, which is making their brains healthy and strong. So let's talk about a few more pros of knitting. So here we go. Number 1, it's a memory booster. Completely. You are counting your stitches, you are reading patterns, and especially if you're knitting garments that have a lot of work and intricate design on them, you could be working with 4 or 5 different yarns at a time. And I have here a copy. I have a huge binder. I actually have several binders of my knitting patterns. Here's one of them. I actually started knitting when I want to say about 8 years old. I was taught by my grandma. So shout out to all those grandmas that have taught us how to knit. They literally gave us a vitamin for our brain. And so my grandmother taught me how to knit. And as I got older, obviously I got patterns. And patterns literally are like if you are reading something with coding. So if you're a coder in computer coding, this is literally what it is, because it's a different language completely. I'll show you what a pattern looks like right here. If you're listening to us, let me read you some of the terminology that we use in knitting patterns. So we have beg, which is beginning. We have K21, so KTOG, so that means knit together. STS, which is stitches. DEC is a decrease, and the list goes on. You have all this different type of language in a pattern, and that your brain is loving that because it's something out of the ordinary. And so hello, yes, it's keeping your memory nice and sharp. Also, it's problem solving. How many times you hear people knitting, oh my gosh, I messed up here, or I dropped a stitch. So you have to go back to the drawing board and figure out how to solve your problem. And again, it's a mini brain training session, if you think about it. Now, number 3 is a really good one. Knitting has a calming effect because that repetitive action creates a similar state like meditation, actually. And it quiets your mind. It is known to decrease anxiety. And actually, there's physical studies that show that knitting can decrease your blood pressure and your heart rate. If that's not amazing, what is? So that's something to really think about. And also, your hands are busy when you're knitting, and so it centers your mind in the moment. And that's hence creating a calming effect. Definitely, I personally have noticed that, yeah, sometimes I'm just a little wound up, have a lot, and I grab my knitting, and it just definitely brings me to a calmer state and reboots me. So I definitely personally have experienced that. Number 4, social interaction. And we all have talked about this on this podcast, that social interaction is extremely important. It decreases depression, it lowers dementia, and we really need to keep that as part of our life. So what can we do with knitting to have social interaction? There's so many knitting groups. Knit shops have knit groups that you can join. Also, there's so many knitting events. There's retreats. I've been to knitting retreats. I've been to New York City, participated in some of the events for Vogue Knitting Live, and actually entered their contest twice in different times. And it was so motivating, and meeting people that have the same passion and can share, we can each share our talents and our advice. So definitely knitting has a lot of benefits. And don't be surprised if doctors might prescribe knitting as part of your health protocol. And definitely don't be afraid to challenge yourself, because remember we talked last time, zona de confort, your comfort zone. This is a great one to step out of it and challenge yourself. So let me share, before we go off to our Spanish class, one thing that also knitting can do is create special bridge generational gaps. And I have this beautiful comforter that my grandmother and my mother both worked on. They knitted, these were crocheted squares. So these are beautiful crocheted squares. My grandmother lived in another country, actually, and she was knitting her squares, and my mom was in another country knitting the squares, and then it was joined together to make this beautiful comforter. And this is just a generational keepsake that is so special, to think that all the time that my grandmother and my mother were making this, they were enjoying this moment. They were doing something good for their mental health, but also for their soul, knowing that this was going to be gifted to me. And I am so eternally grateful. And I will post a picture of this on Instagram, on Posh Teacher #1, to show you if you're just listening to us. Touching. Yes, knitting is an amazing craft, and at all ages, anyone can do knitting. And actually, there's a football player that has a book that he wrote about knitting, and it's an endless possibility who can be knitting and benefit from all of this. Time for Spanish class before we go off to our field trip with Amy. All right, everybody. Get ready. And yes, I have actually a listener that shared with me that they're like, I'm sitting in my car making these funny faces when we're doing the Spanish section, and they're like, I wonder what people are thinking as I'm driving, making these funny faces. But you know what? Those funny faces are so important because they make you sound like a native speaker. You're using your facial muscles and the muscles in your mouth, and these are muscles that you might not use in your native tongue. So it is a surprise for your body to be like, whoa, what face, or why is my tongue behind my teeth? These are different movements that you might not be familiar with, but hello, you're doing amazing things for your brain. So here we go. Since it's a knitting show today, I'm going to teach you the word for yarn. So I'm holding up actually a really pretty colorful yarn I got on a trip to Amsterdam. Traveling is also a great thing when you travel, to find the really unique knitting stores. And it's also part of the knitting world to go to yarn stores and experience being in the shop and talking to other knitters. So here, this one's from Amsterdam. And the word for yarn, here we go. First word today is estambre. That is the word for yarn. Here we go. Estambre. All right, let's try that again. Estambre. and that means yarn. Okay, let's go on to our next word. Next word is a phrase that it's not just related to yarn or knitting, it just means obviously. So, obviously, knitting is really good for you. Here we go. The word obviously, and please say it with a lot of emphasis because you really want to make it a point to be like, obviously, knitting is so good for you. So, here we go. Obvio. That means obviously. That is like my favorite word. All right, let's try it again. Here we go. Obvio. That means obviously. Third time, the word for obviously. Obvio. That is obviously. How cool is that word? So you can use that in any scenario. Obviously, I'm a great Spanish speaker, and you're going to be like, obvio. Okay, because you are. You're doing great. Okay, the third one is a little sentence, and it starts with, I want to learn to knit. So the beginning of it is I want to, and I want to learn. So you could fill in the blanks with other things, not just to knit, right? But we're going to use the word to knit today. So here we go. Here's the first word of the sentence. I want. Quiero aprender a tejer. That reads, I want to learn to knit. Let's try that again and make the funniest faces. Here we go. Quiero aprender a tejer. Perfect. I'm going to say that one more time, and that is a sentence. Quiero aprender a tejer. Excelente. Good job, everyone. All right. And our fourth word for today is congratulations, because, when you finish whatever project you're going to do in knitting, people are going to tell you congratulations. So here's the word for congratulations. Felicidades. All right. It's a long word, but you're going to get it. And you can use this word for anything. Someone's birthday, someone got a promotion. You're going to say, Felicidades. That means congratulations. Let's try it one more time. Felicidades. That means congratulations. Let's go over all our words and phrases today. So here we go. The word for yarn. Estambre. Second word, obviously, obvio. Third sentence, I want to learn to knit. Quiero aprender a tejer. And the last one, congratulations, because you are doing great. Felicidades. You did a great job, everyone. And we are off to hear Amy talk about tejer, to knit. And she's going to show us some amazing pieces that she's worked on. And I hope you enjoy it. And here we go.
Welcome, everyone, to Stir the Cocoa. I am so honored to have Amy. She's a very special friend, and we're going to talk about knitting. Amy, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Amy, first of all, can you tell us about your knitting journey? How did you get started?
I've always been crafty. About 20 years ago, my mom and I were in a yarn shop together, and she suggested that I branch into knitting. And I always thought I was left-handed. People had a hard time teaching me when I was a child to do crafts because of that.
Oh.
So I always thought I couldn't learn how to knit. But my mom bought me a kit. She bought me a book. And that was the beginning of my journey.
So you started learning with a book.
Yes. This was before YouTube. There weren't very many local yarn shops around either. And I worked full time, so it was hard to find a time when they had classes and teaching. It's usually during the day. I couldn't go.
So, what was the first project?
So my first project, it was called Pam's Raise the Bar Scarf, and it was a lot of novelty yarns. And basically what you did is you cast on lengthwise and then just knit 2 rows in each one of these little balls of novelty yarn that she had put together in the kit.
Oh,
And you didn't have to weave in ends or anything because you just knotted them and made fringe on the end when you were done. So it was a perfect learning project. And then my second project, I knit a sweater, a long sweater jacket. It was called, so it's called the Einstein coat. And she said the reason it's called the Einstein coat is because when you're done, you'll feel like a genius. And it was all easy stitches and easy construction. And that was my second project. I still have it.
so tell me, with this knitting journey, have you noticed that it's something good for your mental well-being, for your overall health?
Oh,
What have you
yeah.
experienced with this knitting journey?
So it's just, I don't like to be idle. So it's just a really great, I always have something to do with my hands. I love the feel of the fibers in my fingers, the colors, just the visual of the colors, the way the yarn feels in my hands. It's just,
So
and it
feeling
gives me something to do. It's a sense of accomplishment. It's a great way to express my creativity. And it's just very, for me, very relaxing. I find it very just relaxing and grounding. And at the end of a rough day, it's just the perfect way to sit down and be creative.
Does it
And
de-stress you
it
after a
does.
long day?
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
she's a busy businesswoman, and so you do feel a
Oh,
sense of
yes.
relaxation.
Yeah.
Do you knit every day?
do.
What's oh,
You do? Yeah.
okay.
So I
And-
knit a little bit every day. Yeah.
And if you don't, do you miss it? Yeah. Does it throw you off?
Well, definitely the same if I'm
Really, you don't feel the same. And I remember Amy has said that you have knitting for wherever. If you're in the car, you're going to the dentist. Tell us about that. Your different projects.
I always keep a small, easy project in my car. So if I'd end up waiting in a long line at Costco for gas, like I did today, or stuck in a traffic jam, or the doctor is running late, I can pick up my knitting and I don't think about, I'm not looking at my watch, thinking about how somebody else is disrespecting my time. Or I just pull out my knitting and I relax until it's my turn. And
Wow.
yeah, so I've become a lot less impatient
Wow.
with knitting.
I remember Amy told me, you should have a project at school because we have things going on and whatever. She's like, you should have one at school. And now I always have my school project. Haven't had much time to do anything, but you never know. And yes, you're right. For any situation, having a certain travel project.
Packing the knitting for traveling takes more time.
I agree. I just went on a trip and then I want to make sure it's lightweight. And I have actually a scarf not as gorgeous as this, but then it's only for traveling. So I've been working on it for over a year. And
I have some projects like that.
you do?
And I like to always I'll make sweaters and things like what I'm wearing, but I like to always have something very easy too, because you're not always in situations where you can be counting or looking at the chart or picking up stitches or whatever needs to be done. So I always have something easy going on my needles.
That's wonderful. And reading a pattern, you need a degree in like coding or something. Do you feel that's stimulating your brain when you're
Oh, sure. Yeah. But I don't know what kind of learning that is when you learn from reading. I'm that kind of a learner versus watching a video. I don't learn very easily.
oral video.
So a pattern is right up my alley.
Amy, first of all, I want to talk about what we're wearing because Amy is a designer and she's made amazing patterns. And I remember I was very excited when I got to model her scarf when she made the pattern. And now we are twinning. We're wearing these adorable scarves. Her design. Amy, what inspired you to do design, to be a designer?
Actually, this was inspired by our friend Christy. She made the love. You've got it sitting right over there.
The project on that.
The
Love
friendship train. And I just said, that would be a great use of mini skeins to do it in a cowl. And she said, go ahead and design it.
Right.
So I did. And I I'm not writing patterns. It's a tremendous amount of work to write a pattern, and I just don't have time for that. I much prefer just enjoying the knitting process. But I will design my own sweaters.
And actually, Amy just finished this, 12 hours ago or whatever. That year?
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your work. We've got something beautiful work
So
of art.
this I just love because it's got great color work, the texture. I love pink, but actually I also like this kind of cool blue. This is another one of my favorite colors. And this yarn is just, it's got cashmere in it. It's just soft. It's scrumptious. It's just scrumptious. So I loved making this. This
Tell
is
us about
actually,
this one, Obsessed.
this one's actually crochet.
So
instead of
crochet is
knitting.
also a great pastime, right?
It's not my forte, but I hand crochet. And this was so fun just because of picking all the colors. I think this has 24 different colors in it or 25. And I did this as a knit along with some other people. So it was fun to see what other people were doing at the same time. And I love a good tassel.
Tassel. So you knit a lot. So this is also a very social type of hobby and activity.
Yeah.
Tell us about your experiences with it being a social.
There are groups online that you can join in with, podcasters, people, yarn shops will do knit alongs. A lot of yarn shops will host knitting times of day where you can go and knit with other people. And all of those things are fun. And then just a small group like we have where you get together occasionally and knit.
And what are the benefits of that?
The camaraderie and the friendship. For me, I tend to be an introvert. Knitting, I can talk about knitting forever. And so I don't feel shy and like I don't fit in when I'm with other knitters because I'm talking about something that I really love.
And I know you've traveled to different places,
Yes,
right?
I've gone on knitting retreats, which is fun too, with other knitters I just got back from one at the end of January. Knitters from all over the country. We gathered in Texas for a long weekend of just knitting and friendship, and it was wonderful.
Oh my gosh, that fills your soul.
It does.
Did you come back refreshed?
I did. Yeah. I just felt so much joy when I returned home. I have a good friend who was unfortunately killed in a tragic accident a few years ago. And I had bought a kit to make this shawl. It's called the Slice of Light. And it was in my yarn stash. You see back here forever. And I was getting ready to travel to Colorado for her funeral and trying to figure out what knitting project I was going to take with me. And I just kept thinking it's got to be something easy. And this is such a sad, difficult time. So I was leaning towards like dark yarns. I'll just make a dark hat for my husband or whatever. And I saw this. And I said, no, I'm going to take this. And you wore this, no, I knit it while I was traveling for her funeral. And it will always remind me of her. And it's called the Slice of Light. It was designed by Suzanne Summer when she had cancer. And so it brought her joy in a really difficult time in her life. And this shawl did the same for me when I was more going through the grief of the death of my friend.
Oh, Phoebe.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, so
So knitting can get you through difficult times. A lot of people knit when they're in the hospital with loved ones, and your knits can bring you memories, you know.
And I'm sure when you were knitting this, we're probably going through memory of your friend.
Therapeutic.
This is beyond special, Amy. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Amy, this has been so exciting. Actually, we have two more here. Amy has, how many, tell us. Okay, Amy shared about her wardrobe, that you've gotten rid of all your store-bought sweaters.
All my store-bought sweaters. It's all hand-knit sweaters now. And yeah, I have so many knits.
Do you have a number or no?
Hundreds.
100. Apostrophe S. Okay.
My husband loves hats. He's got 2 big bins full of hats. I knit socks. I make shawls and scarves. Sweaters are my favorite. I love to knit sweaters. But
She's an expert. Amy, wow. She's got 2 sweaters right there.
This
You
I'll
wanna
show
it?
just this one, because this one I added beads, and I wore this to a wedding.
Oh,
I bought a beautiful skirt, and I didn't have anything to go with it, so I made my own, which you do that kind of thing.
yes. And now
all the
more
time.
because I'm not buying clothes. So I'm making everything.
Right.
So, Amy, it was a true honor to be here for you to be here on the program. And I hope it's inspired many other people to get those needles clicking, right? Thank you so much, Amy.
Well, thank you.